What's up, everybody? Celtic Scarecrow here, back from the video. Get those 10 and 20 views. Yes, I'm recording this at midnight, 12:20 a.m. After USA beat Canada in the Four Nations Classic. Now, why am I making this video now? It's quite simple. I like something that this little mini tournament is doing that I really wish the NHL would do. Now, let's get away from here. But yeah, so what are they doing that's so much different than what the NHL is doing that I like? That's how they're doing standings. Currently, the way the NHL works is a win in regulation or in overtime is worth 2 points. A loss in overtime is worth 1 point, and a loss of regulation is currently worth 0 points. Now, that's good and all, but then I notice how the Four Nations are doing it. The way they're doing it is a regulation win is worth 3 points, an overtime win is worth 2 points, an overtime loss is worth 1 point. Now, is that a big difference? In my opinion, yes. What that means is more teams would actually go for the win in regulation. That means a little more aggression. Because there's plenty of times where it's like, a minute to go, both teams, like 2 minutes to go, neither team wants to be aggressive to get that point, to potentially lose a point in the standings. But if you have a chance of picking up a potential 3 points, a realistically 6-point swing on a rival. So, for example, say if the Penguins, who are currently 6 points out of a wild card spot, just say if there's just 6 points out of a wild card spot, and they're playing Detroit, who's ahead of them. Well, now Pittsburgh now jumps up to 58 points, and Detroit stays at 61. That gap closes quicker and makes those games way, way more meaningful. Now, this isn't going to be a super long video because it's not that hard to prove. So I did a couple of stats. I did 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 teams. A 6-team simple thing of how their points would be vastly different. Now, if you look at the current wildcard spot, you have Ottawa sitting at the number one wildcard spot at 62 points. Detroit sitting at 61. The first 3 teams out are Columbus, Boston, and the Rangers. And of course I did the Penguins because I'm a Penguins fan. So if you just were to take those points, currently it would sit, that's how they would sit. But if you change them to this new system, it gets a little more dicey. I'm just writing it down in order. Fixing the order in my. So yeah, like I said, right now you have Ottawa, Detroit, Columbus, Boston, New York, and then Pittsburgh's way down the list. we're down there on the list. So if you were to rechange this system, and I had to look all this stuff up. So starting with Ottawa, we'll start with the highest seed. Ottawa, they have 7 overtime wins, 4 overtime losses. So if you, by doing the math, simple math, redo the points, they would have 66 points in regulation points, 14 overtime points, for a grand total of 84 points currently sitting in this playoff scene. Which, also, yes, this new system would mean the NHL record for most points in a single season by team would get shattered. You would have to make a new record. So there's that. So, but then when you go to Detroit, they had 7 overtime wins, 5 losses. So that means they would only have 63 regular season points, 14 overtime points, and then 5 overtime loss points for a grand total of 82. Moving now to Columbus, who's currently sitting 1 point out of tying Detroit for the wild card spot. 2 points out from just knocking Detroit out of the playoffs currently. They have, get the right team, 8 overtime wins and 8 overtime losses, which means put them at 48 points during the regular season, regulation, 16 overtime points, and 8 overtime loss points, for a grand total of 72. That drops them down. You go to the next team, Boston, which is also 1 point out of a wild card spot, 2 points out of overtaking Detroit. They have 7 overtime wins, but that means the bulk of their 27 wins is in regulation. They would have 70 points in regulation, 14 overtime points, and then 6 overtime loss points, for a grand total of 90 points. They would be that number one wildcard seed just based off these stats alone. And then, of course, I did the Penguins. We had 7 overtime wins and 9 overtime losses, which means we would currently have 48 points due to regulation wins, 14 points due to overtime wins, and 9 points due to overtime losses, for a grand total of 71. So instead of Pittsburgh being 5 points behind Columbus, they would be 1. It would make teams have to win. A team like Boston, who wins in regulation far more than go in not into regulation, would gain such an advantage. Like, the Rangers only played. Oh, I messed up the Rangers. I definitely messed up the Rangers. No, I didn't mess with the Rangers. The Rangers only played 6 overtime games. They won 2 of them. So they would have 75 points in the regulation. I must have skipped the Rangers. I did skip the Rangers. Yeah, Rangers played 6 overtime games, won 2 of them, which means they would have 75 points due to regulation win, 4 points due to overtime wins, 4 points due to overtime losses, for 83 points. So yes, this system would so help a lot of teams out. It also would create so much more chaos in the hockey standings. And like I said, there is something about teams that know how to win in regulation. They don't need the extra time. Now, do I think teams should get a point for making it to overtime? Yes. It took extra amount of time. You get that 1 point. But you should not get the full point for not being able to beat a team in overtime. Because how many times have you seen a team up by a goal and they get scored on late? So yes, I do like the 3-2-1 system. I wish the NHL would adopt it. I am not going to go through every single team, tell you how the standings currently would work out that way. But I do think this is something the NHL should look forward to going forward, because it could make so much more sense, at least with points-wise. But that's it. That's all I have. I'll see you weird people hopefully tonight. I am streaming tonight's game, USA, Sweden. Come check it out. 8 o'clock. I'll be doing some little monster hunting during in the intermission. That's it. I have. See you weird people later.